Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Herbie, and this is another episode of Wisdom After the Fall. And today we're going to discuss what I promised I would discuss on the video before the last video. I recorded a little filler video yesterday because I was having a shitty day and I wanted to share with you how I handle that sort of thing. But today I'm going to get back on subject and I'm going to do the follow-up to where I said that the Democratic Socialists of America are right to feel the way they feel, and they're right to be looking for alternatives to the current messed up system. They've just got their alternative messed up because socialism has never worked. Now, just as a quick aside, I'm not going to get into a whole discussion of what is socialism versus what is capitalism, except for two statements. One, Thomas Sowell, the greatest living economist in the United States, feel free to look him up and see who he is, has something that he says. He's actually he's not my mentor because I don't know him. He's my hero. Let me just say that. He's my chosen, unattached mentor hero, and he's my favorite living American. And he said there are three questions you have to ask whenever you look at something that you want to try that's new. And the first question is, as compared to what? So when you look at socialism, when you ask that question, as compared to what, there is no place that it's worked, not one. It's been tried again and again and again. And that means you don't even have to go to the second question, which is, where is your data? If you say, well, it's never worked, but we're going to be the ones that can do it right, well, where's your data that would support that? Other than your feelings, and your feelings that you would do it better, and this free-floating feeling of it's got to be better than the mess we're in sort of thing, and I understand that, you don't have any data because there is no way for it to work. And there's a very simple reason. And I want to share this especially with, and I call you kids because I'm almost 70 years old and you Democratic Socialists are mostly Gen Z. So I just want to make this, I'm going to call you kids. I don't mean it to be demeaning. It's just the relationship between my ancient age where I have a lot of experience and your young age where your whole life is in front of you and why I understand the way you feel. Look, I want you to have a good life, but most of you are not sociopaths and psychopaths. And systems that look at the system we have now and look what's wrong with it. Look at the elites. Look at the, not corporations, the mega corporations that have special favors and they curry them from the government. And they curry them from the government not because they're evil, but because the government requires it. Remember, the government has a monopoly on force. It is the ultimate authority. So for business to get what it wants, it has to play the game as it's laid out. Yes, it's a corrupt game. It's a massively corrupt game. Yes, it's wrong, and yes, you're suffering for it. But what's wrong with it is that the people who are in government, if you really think about it, are all sociopaths and psychopaths because of particularly social media today, which would destroy your life. Think about you running for office and the things that would come out at your young age. Now imagine you're more like 30, 40, 50, 60 years old and you're running for office and you have a life and you've done things. Everyone's done things they don't want to talk about in public. And you've built a life and a family. Would you ever be the person in power, or would it be the psychopath and the sociopath who is drawn to that power like moths to the flame? It's not a aberration that Stalin ended up in charge in Russia, or that Mao ended up in charge in China, or that Pol Pot ended up in charge in Cambodia, or that Fidel Castro ended up in charge in Cuba, or that the Kims ended up in charge in North Korea, and I can go on. It's because they're all psychopaths. Those aren't aberrations. When you have absolute power in the hands of whether it's dictatorship of the workers or not, you can call it whatever you want. Names are, like assholes. Everybody has one. But it doesn't mean anything. And you, the innocent, and if you want to see just some corroboration of this, I don't know if it's corroboration so much, but how this goes, there's an old movie called Reds with Warren Beatty. Check it out. It's what happens to idealistic people in a revolution. In his case, it was the Russian Revolution. It's an excellent movie. It's an old movie, but it's a great movie. Anyway, let's get on. I told you I was going to give you the plan. I am going to give you the plan. Look, I said it in the last video. I'll say it again here. None of us have ever lived in a capitalist country. And my plan is to make you personally, a capitalist. And I'm going to make everybody in America capitalist, from the poorest people to the wealthiest. The problem is, yes, there's an enormous gap in wealth, but it's not what you think. I'm going to repeat a statistic I said in the first episode just to drive it home. The collective net worth of all of us together, all 340 million Americans, is about $184 trillion, give or take a nickel. Of that 184 trillion, 4 trillion of that is in the hands of people who are earning in the bottom 50%. The bottom 50% owns almost nothing. 4 trillion is just a little more than 2% of 184 trillion. Let me put that in perspective for you, because these big numbers for a lot of people don't mean anything. It's 2%. You're 50% of the population, you have 2% of the wealth. And I know I'm speaking to most of you young democratic socialists too, because at least if the surveys are accurate, most of you are college educated, most of you have enormous student loans, most of you are young, and most of you are just starting out, and most of you are earning $30,000 to $60,000 a year, and the median income is about $75,000 a year. So if you're making less than $75,000 a year, you're a part of this 2% of the wealth of the country. Now you're saying to yourself, well, let's just go get it from the billionaires. But the billionaires hold about $8 trillion, $7 or $8 trillion, just somewhere in there. All of the billionaires plus our one trillionaire, Elon Musk, together, collectively, are worth about $7 to $8 trillion, which is again about 4%. So if we took all of their 4%, here's what would happen. They're all major employers. We would have massive, massive unemployment. Do you really believe that anybody that you know in the socialist movement has the talent to take over SpaceX? Just think logically. Don't get caught up in, Trump derangement or you hate this one or you hate that one or whatever your syndrome might be. Just forget that. Think of your own self-interest. Do you know anybody in the Democratic? Had you seen anyone in the Democrat socialist movement that could run Microsoft, run Google? You wipe out the billionaires, you wipe out millions of jobs. It'll just slaughter people. So let's not get too hung up on that. The billionaires really don't have the money. Where the other $163 trillion are, where the 94% of wealth is in the top 50% of income earners between $75,000 and the billionaire level. By the way, if you drop the net worth requirements down to just millionaires worth $50 million or more, wealthy people, but not sickeningly wealthy, they only have another 4%, about another 8 trillion. Still, the vast majority of wealth in this country is in the hands of people who make more than $75,000 a year that are just middle class. They have it in their houses primarily and in their 401ks. So here are my solutions for you, my friends. You're feeling the way you do because you're disaffected. Watch my last video. Let me tell you my plan. Step 1. This is what I call the plan. I call it just stop. Just stop. No new plans, no new programs from politicians. Every politician, stop running on, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Literally, there is no such thing as a government program that works the way it was intended or for remotely the cost. You can look at the obvious ones like Obamacare, which has turned out to be a disaster, or you can take a look at Medicare, Medicare for all. Medicare is bankrupting the country, guys. We put it on Medicare for all. There won't be a country to have Medicare for all. I know that it sounds great. That's a great slogan. And there are better alternatives. I'm not going to go into the healthcare discussion today, but there are better alternatives. There are much better alternatives. Again, remember, you've never lived in a free market, so you don't really know. You think you live in a free market. You live in what I call a crapitalist economy, crony capitalism, okay? You haven't lived in a real capitalist model, and you would have to have been born and lived before 1913 to have experienced it, which, by the way, was the century of the greatest growth in world history in the United States. More people were lifted out of poverty in the 19th century in the United States than any other country, at any other place, at any other time in history. And that was pure capitalism. It was also a time of great generosity, but I don't want to digress. Okay, so let's keep going on. So just stop. No new laws, no new programs. Stop trying to help. Every time they try to help, they fuck it up. So let's not do that. Let's go with a 3-step plan for you. Number 1, let's talk about student loans, since so many of you are on student loans. My proposal is allow you to bankrupt them. Right now, you cannot bankrupt student loans. I think you should be allowed to bankrupt them. It's not going to make everybody happy. The argument against allowing you to be discharged or forgiving your student loans are all the millions and millions of young working men and women who did not go to college and did not go to trade schools and did not take student loans, but went straight into the trades as plumbers and carpenters and electricians and everything else. And they bought themselves, for example, a work truck, and they spent $40,000 or $50,000 on that truck, which is just the same as your loan, and they're using it for exactly the same purpose, only they're using it productively. But if we're going to forgive your loan and we're not going to forgive their loan, Can you see the unfairness in that? We're basically singling out the educated and saying, screw you, uneducated, for working hard. Screw you for buying your equipment, your tools, your truck. I mean, you can easily spend $100,000 on tools and truck. Those of you who are in the working world, you know that's true. We can't do that. So instead, we're going to compromise. We're not going to forgive your student loans. We're going to allow you to bankrupt them. Then you can choose if you want to or you don't. You can either continue with your student loan and make the payments and keep it over time, or you can choose simply to bankrupt it out and take the hit on your credit. That way you're going to suffer a consequence for making a schmucky decision. And while I did sympathize with you, and I do sympathize with you taking those loans and the bill of goods you were sold, in the end, you could have figured it out. There are millions of young people that did and did not take those loans and did not get themselves in this trouble. You happened to fall for the joke, and I understand that, and that was a mistake, and you're young and you're allowed to make a mistake, but you can't make everybody else pay for it, and you have to suffer a consequence for it. And that consequence is the credit hit you're going to take when you go bankrupt. You won't owe the money anymore, but for the next 10 years, that's going to show up in your records. However, I can tell you from experience, and as an entrepreneur, I have declared bankruptcy before, as have most entrepreneurs. You know, most guys don't succeed right away. They try, they fail, they try, they fail, they try, they fail. And bankruptcy laws are the foundation of our entire economy, because the alternative to bankruptcy laws are debtors' prisons. And if we had debtors' prisons, which is what they had in the old days before capitalism invented bankruptcy. Yeah, capitalism invented bankruptcy. Before bankruptcy came around, if you failed in business, you'd go to prison. Okay, so obviously not many people started businesses. The reason that you can't drive down a street in America and there are thousands and millions of small businesses, every kind of store you can imagine, everywhere, is because the owners know that if they fail, it's not the end. The worst case scenario is they take bankruptcy. And after you take bankruptcy, and I can tell you this from experience, it doesn't take 10 years to get your credit back. It takes a year or two. You know, you go out, you get a little secured credit card, you make a couple of payments on it, you reestablish a decent credit score, you reaffirm your car, you maintain your car payments. There are lots of little tricks, and in 2 years from the day of the bankruptcy, you'll have a 700 plus credit score if you keep your nose clean and can go out and do whatever you need to do financially. And you took a hit, but you faced it like an adult, and you're out from under it, and you're free to go. So that's my solution for student loans. Allow them to, yes, that means that this government's going to take a hit. The government has allowed so much to be stolen and wasted that this is just going to be one more hit, and we're just going to have to face it. We can't leave an entire generation of young people out there rooting for an idiotic, murderous system because they're buried under a sea of debt, among other things. We just can't allow that to go on. My suggestion is just let them bankrupt it. Don't let it be, it can't be painless, but that's the compromise. Step 2, what about houses? Housing is incredibly expensive for lots of different reasons. It's not as simple as saying just this, but the overall arching reason is the entire federal and local government system has structured itself to make houses go up in value without any thought to making sure there was a supply of entry-level houses underneath it. In other words, the interest on a home loan is tax deductible, and an interest on a car loan isn't. That gives you one idea how houses are favored. And there are government guaranteed programs like FHA loans, or if you're a veteran, VA loans to give you loans for that. And you can depreciate the house while it's appreciating on paper. There's all kinds of things you can do. All the laws are set up, particularly the tax laws, are set up to benefit the rising price of houses. And the reason there's no entry-level houses is it's been unbelievably successful in doing that. While at the same time, local governments, like for example in Los Angeles, the entire city of Pacific Palisades burned down. I'm not even going to get into that argument on what caused it and how it happened. I can tell you not a single house has been rebuilt, and the reason for that is local regulation. And in New York City, where the mayor has idiotically put in rent control, make yourself a note. A year from now, they'll be marching in the streets saying, take off the rent control. It's going to be devastating to the rental market. Landlords are simply going to take units off the market because they can't break even, because their expenses are going up. And if you freeze their rent and everything else is going up, not to mention the regulatory burden of being in New York City, which is the worst in the country, by the way, for a landlord, you can see it's not a recipe for prosperity. It's idiotic. Okay, so what would I do? Can't do anything about New York, can't do anything about LA. Those of you who live there are going to have to fight it out in your local politics and dig with Mom and fight with Mom Donnie and fight with Karen Bass and all those people that are being just incredibly retarded. But I'll leave that to you. What we can do on the federal level is repeal the income tax code. Get rid of it. Repeal the entire Internal Revenue Code. That would also get rid of a lot of crony capitalism. All the tax benefits, all the breaks, all that goes away. And then we replace it with a new system of flat taxes. Okay, and the flat tax is 15% on income on everybody, okay, including you. Everybody pays 15%, all the way up to Elon Musk, all the way down to you. A flat, you can do your taxes on a postcard. You make $50,000 a year, your federal tax is $7,500 spread out over 12 months, about $600 a month. Everything else you keep. And then on capital gains, we tax them flat at 40%. Now, the wealthy, their heads are going to explode. All of you young socialists are going to be fine. You're not going to moan and groan because you don't have any capital gains to worry about, and this is really going to affect the rich. But capital gain, we should not be taxing the earnings. We should be taxing the gains. Okay, we're going to have to tax. Look, I'm a libertarian. I'd like no tax at all, but I also live in the real world where there's a $39 trillion debt. And if we don't change the trajectory on that debt, in other words, stop it from going up and start, we don't have to pay it off tomorrow, but we have to change the trajectory to its reducing. The trajectory, did I say directory? I'm senile. Trajectory down to, I'm not really senile. That was just a slip of, it's not Freudian something. Anyway, so basically it should be, capital gains should be taxed at 40%. And not just capital gains when you sell something, but when you borrow against something, to use it in business, you should have to pay capital gains the amount that you borrow against, the same as you would as if you sold the asset. There's an advantage to not selling the asset. I'm not going to go into the finance of it, but rich people, you'll be fine. You'll be fine with keeping 60% of your gains, and you'll be fine with keeping 85% of your income because you can fire your accountants. Life will be simple, rich people. You won't have to, you don't have to figure out depreciation schedules. You don't have to look for tax shelters. You don't have to look for fancy ways to hide things. You don't have to look for anything. All you have to do, okay, is pay your 15% and pay the 40% on any capital gains you choose to take, and that's it. And that revenue will be more revenue than we're collecting now, and we can start to change the trajectory. Now, that suggestion, by the way, won't affect you young people right away, but it will affect you later when housing prices moderate. Now, I saved the most controversial and best suggestion for last, okay? In 1982, under Ronald Reagan, it was the last time the Congress of the United States fixed, I hate doing quotation marks, but it's all I got, man, fixed Social Security. And what they did was basically raise taxes on both employees and employers, the matching contributions back and forth. Cost employers, the average employee costs an employer about $29,000 a year to have on the books before they even pay you a salary. I know you guys don't really understand that, but it's true. Between OSHA compliance and HIPAA compliance and local regulation compliance and EPA compliance and all the various kinds of compliance, it costs a fortune to hire an employee, plus the matching FICA contributions. So don't think employers are hiring you just on a whim. They hired you because they think you're worth it. Your salary plus another 29 grand is worth it. Okay, so they're not your enemy. But I want to turn you into the employer, and here's how we're going to do it. The goal of America from this point forward should be to turn every single working American into capitalists. And how we do that is to make you rich. And how we do that without you having to do anything but what you're doing except go to work, okay, is privatize Social Security. If back in 1982, Ronald Reagan had not, he wanted to privatize it, and there was a senator named Jack Kent out of New York, out of Buffalo, actually. I think he was a congressman. He wasn't a senator. He was a congressman. He had run for vice president with Bob Dole, yada, yada, yada. That was later. But was that later? Might be getting my time. Yeah, it was later. It was against Bill Clinton. But anyway, the bottom line, it just didn't happen. And what they would say is the same thing. The reason I'm bringing this up now on top of DSA, which is idiotic, and I want you guys to redirect your energies into something where you really have a chance to both save yourselves and America and make yourself rich instead of a worker. Remember, read the Communist Manifesto. It traps you as a worker for your entire life. You are a worker. You will never be capital. You will always be a worker. You will always be a slug. You will always be a nameless, faceless thing to them. They won't care about you. You're just another worker. You have no real importance. Why would you want to trap yourself? My plan is going to move you to capitalist. You're going to be rich. Okay? Let me explain. So anyway, back in 1982, it was made mandatory that all the excess money being contributed into the trust fund that wasn't needed to be paid out right away, because most of the money that goes into the trust fund goes out right away to current recipients, by the way. It's a pay-as-you-go system. The trust fund is really an accounting fiction. All of that money went into government bonds, which meant that we lent it back to the government to spend on interest and stupid plans and fraud. That's where your money went. You have a piece of paper in that trust fund called a government bond. The money itself has been wasted, 2/3 of it at least, and the third that went to work badly. And now you're sitting there, and the average Social Security distribution today, if you had been my age back in 1982 and you retired today, I'm 69, but let's pretend you're 65 and you just retired today, and I've done the math on this, so go with me. Your average retirement benefit would be $1,594 a month, assuming that you made maximum contributions based on your average wages and yada yada. There's a lot of assumptions that go into that. I'm not going to bore you with it, but it's $1,594 a month. Some people get more, significantly more, because they earn significantly more and contributed significantly more. Some get less. But let's just work with this mean average amount, okay? $1,594 a month. Had you been that exact same person at that exact same earning level, just the median, and your money instead had gone into a blind index of the Standard & Poor's 500, let me explain that. A blind index means there's no management, no decisions to be made. It's simply the 500 largest companies in America make up the Standard & Poor's 500, and it's simply a weighted portfolio. Don't try to get into the weeds on that. There's no management, just certain companies based on size get more shares, less shares to even it all up based on size and weighting based on their size in relation to the S&P 500. If I lost you in that, don't worry, you don't have to be a mathematician to do this. Just stay with me, okay? Had you been done that way, had we privatized it then, do you know what your average monthly check would be today? $9,500 a month. $9,500 a month versus $1,594. Now, you're going to say to yourself, if you're really risk averse, but it's going to fluctuate. The stock market goes up, the stock market goes down, my income will fluctuate. You're right. It certainly will. Guess what the lowest it would have been since you retired? The lowest it's been in that entire period of time, the entire 24-year period. Guess what the lowest income level would have been? $5,008 a month. That was during the crash of 2008. That's as low as your income would have ever gone. So an income range of $9,500 down to the lowest it ever was, $5,008, all the way back up to $9,500. And it's going to grow in the future. As you're retired, your money would keep working and keep growing and keep adjusting your income and keep making you richer. And oh, by the way, in my plan, you have full access to your account. That's how I make you a capitalist, because let's talk about just the sheer raw numbers. Now, I said this in my last podcast. I'll say it again. If you were a minimum wage employee back in 1982 making $3.25 an hour, and all you ever made your entire career before you retired, today, let's pretend you retired today, was the minimum wage, whatever the minimum wage. Today, the federal minimum wage is $7 and change. So you've never made more than $7 and change. You've just contributed to Social Security. Your employers have matched all these years. Today, you would have $750,000 and full access to it at your retirement. $750,000. Now let's think about you'd have to be a real idiot to work for 40 years on minimum wage. Minimum wage is simply a starter level. And then you get into the company and you learn the trade or you learn the business and you rise or you get new jobs, you go to other companies, you'll make a lot more. But even if you make basically shit, you're still almost a millionaire. And I drive every day medical transport for people on Medicaid. And I'm going to tell you how life-changing that would be. I drove a woman this morning who has a very rare case of kind of a nasal cancer. She had been given 3 months to live. She pulled through, but she's been disfigured and da-da-da. And she wants to have reconstructive surgery, but that's not something Medicare and Medicaid pay for, okay? But have she had $750,000, that would have been easy. Now, oh yeah, they pay for a certain amount of it, but not to put you back the way you were. If you wanted to go to a really good, I'm telling you, if you want to go to a good plastic surgeon, you're going to pay for it. Well, you'd be able to pay for it with $750,000. But let's pretend you're an average person, okay? And you made an average of today's wage, $75,000 adjusted for inflation back then, but you were basically making the average the whole time. You'd have about $5.5 to $6 million today. Between $5.5 and $6 million. That's what I mean by converting everyone to a capitalist. Every single one of you, when you retire, would have millions of dollars. Now, you would be able to access that account under my plan, even before you retired, for the down payment on a house. So anytime that you needed to get a down payment on a house and you wanted to get into that market and you wanted to start building some wealth and equity, you have a multi-million-dollar, basically your personal 401k, your national 401k. We can call it whatever we want. Your national savings plan, your national 401k, call it what you want, but it'd be your money. Get the money out of the hands of government. They fuck up everything they touch. privatize Social Security and allow people like you will be rich. And here's what it does for the country, and here's what it does for you is obvious. Now, you might be saying to yourself, what if it goes to zero? What if the stock market goes to zero? Then I'll lose everything. If the stock market goes to zero, your government bonds won't be worth anything either. The Standard & Poor's 500 is literally the measure of wealth of the United States. If that goes down, government bonds will be useless. The government will drop in chaos. We'll have a revolution. There'll be rioting in the streets. This is a scenario that's not going to happen. The stock market has never gone to zero. Not in the Great Depression, not ever. It's not going to happen. And what it does, because there's two kinds of risks. Let me just explain this quickly. There's principal risk, which is what if it goes to zero? And there's market risk, which is what if it doesn't keep up with inflation and my expenses? And market risk is the much more real risk. Everyone's focusing on what if I lose my money in a scenario where you're not going to lose your money. And even if you did, then it won't matter what the plan is. We're all fucked. Okay? But assuming that the United States percolates on as it has, for all of its good and bad, we're still the greatest economic engine that mankind has ever invented. You become a shareholder in America. You become the corporation. Because what is a corporation? But everyone owning a little piece of a big company. And through the S&P 500 fund that you will own a piece of Google and SpaceX and Microsoft. And every time you hear a piece of news, you'll say, this is great. It's making my personal account go up and it's making me richer and richer. And there won't be any management fees because it's a blind index and no bureaucrats will be taking money out of it. No government will be borrowing from it. And it'll be all yours and you will be rich. You don't have to be a communist or a socialist. You can be a capitalist and have the good life and drive a great car and have a beautiful home and have a beautiful life. All we have to do is privatize Social Security. Now, what about those of us, and I can hear all the people my age watching this, watching their heads explode. I paid in, I deserve my money. Listen, me too. It's too late for me. My future is a dirt nap. So's yours. Okay, let's be honest. Now, I hope to live another 10, 20, 30 years, who knows? But no man is promised tomorrow. And what we're going to have to do is transition people like me out. Okay, so we're going to have to use some government tax revenue to pay out the guaranteed minimal benefits that go to people like me and other people around based on the old school. And eventually we're all going to die and go away in the next 20 or 30 years, and then that'll be gone. We'll just transition out of it. Meanwhile, all of you young people will be rich. I'll be gone, but my grandchildren and my children who you are will be rich. I want to make you rich. The solution isn't socialism, it's capitalism, because you've never been a capitalist, and it's to make you a capitalist. So let's review, and then I'm going to end the video for today. Just Stop is the name of the program. No more laws, no more programs. Stop trying to help us. Democrats and Republicans, stop trying to help. You fuck up everything you touch, you sociopaths, you psychopaths. Get out of the way. Just go home. Donald Trump, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Tom Tillis, you name it, I don't give a shit. You're all a bunch of nothing. Get them out of the way. Then, if you have student loans that are bearing you, you take bankruptcy. You take a hit, you get over it, you lick your wounds, you move on. Meanwhile, you have this huge account growing while you're working. You're going to be just fine. Just fine, my friends. Then, number two, we're going to repeal the tax code and make so you can do your income tax on a postcard, and your income is barely taxed, and it's only capital gains. And by the way, withdrawals from this fund will not be taxed. Those will be tax-exempt withdrawals. That's the one special exception of all, just from other things, okay? And that's it. That's it, okay? Very, very simple. And third and finally, privatize Social Security. And then we all live happily after, because what happens is we restore the country without amending the Constitution to the original idea of the founders. Let's remember that the founders made the initial requirement to vote in this country that you had to own property. And at the time, that meant real estate at the time because they were all agricultural. Back in those days, before oil was discovered in Oil City, PA in 1830, was it 1839, 1859? I think it was 1859. Before that, everyone had no productivity. Energy equals prosperity, my friends. So once that happened, of course, today, less than 1% of the population grows the food for the entire, we could feed the world. The reason there are places in the world starving isn't because we're assholes or we're horrible capitalists, it's corrupt local governments stealing. But that's another discussion for another day, who don't care about their people. Not everybody's an American, guys. It's just the way it is. However, okay, we grow a lot of food without very many people. So we're not going to do the land requirement, but we can reinstate that requirement because it's smart. Now, since you're going to own a piece of America, every single working person, whether it's the minimum wage to the guy making $1 million, $2 million, $10 million a year, every single person in America is going to own a piece of America. Okay? Not only will it throw lots of money back into the economy and companies to grow with, not only will it be dynamic for America, but it'll give you skin in the game. And so you'll start to vote smarter. You won't fall for stupid things like socialism. If you owned $1 million right now, imagine you had an account of $1 million right now. Would you be a socialist? Really? You had $1 million in the bank, just yours. You could pay off your student loans tomorrow. Would you be a socialist? Be honest. You can sit there and tell yourself, yes, I would be. It's about socialism isn't about being nice. Okay, capitalism is real nice. Okay, we can get into that on another day. But okay, the fact of the matter is, you really wouldn't. You wouldn't have any problems. You'd be living the dream. You wouldn't be worrying about a thing. And that's what I'm promising you would happen if we institute this program. Just stop. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed this podcast today. By the way, before we go, don't forget to go over to Amazon and buy your copy of A Radical Reset. It's $2.99 on Amazon. No one's trying to get rich doing this. In this is a breakdown of lots of my ideas and more. Now, my ideas have evolved, and some of the privatizing Social Security idea is in here, but not in the detail that I shared it today. But we'll continue to do that. But if you want to take a look at everything, plus a political system that promises to get rid of all of the sociopaths and psychopaths and take all of the money out of politics, all of it. Every penny, no campaign contributions, no political action committees, no, gone. The political parties become nothing but advocates for a point of view that then you can then choose smartly because you have a piece of the action in America. If you want to learn what that is, it's called anti-politism. And this is the manifesto for it, and this will teach you what it is. It's democracy the way the Greeks originally practiced it. And that's really what it is. And read it. There's more to it than that, but you'll enjoy it. Also, if you go to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, either or, I'm going to build a community there. In fact, I have meetings this weekend to structure that, to have a private chat rooms and so on and so forth, and benefits. But in the meantime, the very first thing I'll send you, if you commit to a $9 a month, support the show commitment because you like what I'm doing and what I'm saying, and this is the ground floor, and obviously you got to crawl before you walk and walk before you run, and I'm crawling at this point with my hundreds of viewers on my shorts and my dozens of viewers on my long form, But hey, the longest journey is shortened by each step. If you want to join and help out and pledge the $9 a month, I will send you a free copy of A Radical Reset. Thank you very much for joining me today. Have a beautiful day. I'm recording this on a Friday, so I'm going to say have a beautiful weekend. I will be fishing at that lake behind me. That is Tempe Town Lake, and I will be fishing at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning in the dark because it's 113 degrees in Phoenix today, and I will not be fishing after 8 a.m. You got to get up and get it done here, my friends. But here's the thing about Phoenix, just to share, you don't have to shovel it. Every place has its bad weather, but you don't have to shovel it. It doesn't rust your cars. It doesn't put potholes in the street. It doesn't shake the ground. It doesn't rip up houses and throw them into the sky like a tornado. It's just hot. And, we just learn to work around it because thank God we have air conditioning. Have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful weekend, and peace out.